The better AI gets at producing everything, the less your paycheck matters to the economy. Not because your job disappears tomorrow, but because the machine economy eventually stops needing human consumers or human workers to keep running. That's not a headline. That's the structural argument two economists laid out on Dwarkesh Patel's podcast, and it means the wealth AI creates could be real, enormous, and almost entirely out of reach for most people. AI automation has already moved from theoretical risk to active corporate cost-cutting. Major technology and services firms publicly attributed headcount reductions to AI deployment as early as 2023, and BLS projections already show shrinkage in multiple service and cognitive roles. The economic frameworks most people are using to evaluate this were built for a world where machines and humans still needed each other. That assumption is now being tested in real payroll data. On the Dwarkesh Patel podcast, economists Alex Imas and Phil Trammell made a claim that cuts against both the doom narrative and the optimist one. Their argument starts with a point that sounds reassuring. As AI automates most economic activity, scarcity shifts toward inherently human things: care, presence, genuine relationship. Demand for those things should hold up. That sounds like good news for workers. Most commentators stop there and declare the problem solved. But Trammell's framework adds a second step that almost no one in the public debate addresses. The question isn't just whether humans can still produce things people want. The question is whether the machine economy needs the human economy at all. Trammell's argument is that it may not. AI systems can produce goods, allocate resources, and reinvest capital, all without requiring human consumers to purchase the output or human workers to supply the inputs. The machine economy, in other words, can become a self-sustaining loop. And once it does, the human economy is no longer the engine of growth, it's a sidecar. Human labor's share of total output can drift towards zero, not because anyone decided to impoverish workers, but simply because the machine loop becomes self-sufficient, and the human slice stops growing in proportion to the whole. That is the payoff of the paradox. AI abundance is real, but your paycheck is measured relative to total output, and if total output explodes while your contribution to it approaches zero, your living standard depends entirely on whether anyone chooses to redistribute the gains. How money works extends this directly. If workers lose income, the consumer base that purchases goods contracts, and you get a demand crisis layered on top of displacement. Economics Explained reaches the same endpoint from a different angle. As AI automates more tasks, the share of output going to labor shrinks unless demand for entirely new categories of goods expands fast enough to absorb it. The Future of Life Institute frames it as a coordination failure. Productivity gains accrue to capital owners, while workers lose the income needed to participate in the economy the AI is building. Marginal Revolution University offers the most historically grounded counterpoint. Past automation episodes did reshape job composition without destroying aggregate demand, which is the empirical basis for optimism. But Imas and Trammell's point is that historical analogies may not hold when the automation is general enough to operate without human inputs at all. Here is where the sources divide most sharply. Marginal Revolution University's empirical work, drawing on research into superstar firms and the long-run labor share, finds that automation historically reshapes which jobs exist rather than how many people work. Demand for new goods and services has absorbed displaced workers over multiple industrial transitions, and labor's share of output, while under pressure, has not collapsed to zero. Imas and Trammell acknowledge the same history, but three other sources push back hard on applying that optimism to AI. How Money Works cites survey data from 697 companies showing that AI adoption in contact centers correlates with significantly fewer new hires and substantial layoffs among existing staff. Not a gradual compositional shift, but immediate headcount reduction. Economics Explained points to BLS projections forecasting shrinkage in multiple service and cognitive roles, and argues AI is acting as a direct replacement for junior white-collar workers rather than a complement that frees them for higher-value tasks. The Future of Life Institute warns that cost-driven substitution of entry-level tech and software workers is already underway, and that counting on demand elasticity to absorb it is a hope, not a mechanism. The optimists are reasoning from historical pattern. The pessimists are pointing at current data in specific sectors and saying, the pattern has already broken, and the break is visible in hiring spreadsheets right now, not in macroeconomic aggregates that will catch up later. Across all the sources, 2 points hold regardless of where you land on the optimism spectrum. First, entry-level and routine white-collar workers face the most concentrated near-term displacement risk, even if macroeconomic aggregates stay stable. The disruption will be uneven before it is universal. Your industry's hiring pipeline is a more sensitive signal than national unemployment figures. Second, who owns AI capital matters more than how much AI produces. The Future of Life Institute, How Money Works, and the Dwarkesh episode all converge on this point. Productivity gains that accrue entirely to capital owners do not automatically benefit workers, and the distribution question is inseparable from the growth question. A booming AI economy and a shrinking labour share are not contradictions. They can happen simultaneously. 3 concrete moves follow from this analysis. First, audit your own job for task-level exposure. List which of your daily tasks are routine, language-based, or pattern matching, and estimate what percentage of your working time they consume. Then check whether your sector's entry-level hiring is already contracting. That pipeline is typically the first indicator of structural change, not aggregate employment figures. A job that still exists today can lose its entry-level feeder roles silently, which tells you something about where it is headed. Second, look at where your savings are positioned. The wealth distribution argument from multiple sources here is not abstract. If productivity gains flow to capital owners, then holding broad index funds with significant technology exposure is a different bet than relying on labour income alone. That is not investment advice. It is a framework for understanding which side of the capital-labour divide your household is actually on. If you earn wages and own no capital, the AI economy is something that happens to you. If you own a slice of the companies building it, you participate in the upside. Understanding that distinction is the first step toward doing something about it. If breakdowns like this are useful, subscribing means you won't miss the next one. Third, track a leading indicator specific to your industry. Monthly job postings for entry-level roles in your sector are a more sensitive signal than unemployment rates. Tools like LinkedIn Talent Insights can surface this at no cost. A sustained decline of 20% or more in entry-level postings over 2 to 3 quarters is an early sign of structural rather than cyclical change. The kind of signal that shows up in hiring data a year or more before it registers in the headline numbers most people are watching. Here is a forced choice worth leaving in the comments. Do you think demand for new categories of human goods will absorb AI displacement? Or has the machine economy already become self-sufficient enough that labour's share is structurally in decline? Not, what do you think about AI? That specific question. All source links are in the description.